What's up, guys? It's three-time NFL Pro Bowler, all-decade return specialist, Josh Cribbs. I want to welcome you to the College Sports Connection podcast, where Double A, Alex, and AJ host the Mid-American Conference Best.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the College Sports Connection podcast. I'm your host, Alex the Captain. Joining me, as always, it's AJ the Guru.
What's going on, everybody?
AJ, welcome back. We had an exciting weekend this weekend, a couple different events going on. You were out in Colorado covering Western Michigan women's basketball, one of the first for us, while I was in Detroit covering the MAC championship.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Different day. We were two different parts of the country, 2-hour time change. So it's kind of fun to see different. Well, of course, we've been to Ford Field many times, but going to a new venue up at Fort Collins, up there at Moby Arena, talk about a really cool arena, a really cool campus. It was interesting. Walking around the arena. I got there about a half hour, 45 minutes before tip off. Went down to the court, saw, watched Western warm up. Talked to a few coaches. Actually, one of the coaches played at Western when I was at Ball State, so I definitely saw her play a few times in my time going to games. And then I walked around the facility a little bit. It was really cool. They also had their Sports Hall of Fame in there.
Sure.
And it was kind of cool seeing some names that you either didn't know or forgot that were involved with Colorado State. Earl Bruce, for example, the legendary coach, came to Ohio State from Colorado State. Then I saw Becky Hammond, the legendary women's basketball WNBA coach and former NBA assistant with the Spurs. She played at Colorado State. Her jersey was up there. I think she had her WNBA All-Star jersey was in there signed.
That's cool.
A couple articles in one of her Colorado State jerseys. So that was really cool to see. I had no idea she went there.
Yeah, I had no idea either until you sent that to me.
You see those things. It's really interesting, but really cool arena. It was kind of cool because they had the girls game at noon, and then at like 2:30, the men played. So they played back to back, which was a lot of fun. I didn't stay for the men's game, but they started piling people in there second half or so of the women's game. But Western, they were on a 2-game road trip that they played at Colorado Boulder, which is about 45 minutes southwest of Fort Collins on like Thursday, and then Saturday they played in Fort Collins. And Western, just they struggled with size. Colorado State was so much bigger than the Western the Broncos were. That's why it was a 20-point loss, 85 or what was it, 85-65 or something like that. But overall, it was a good, tough. That's a tough road trip coming from Kalamazoo, no matter who you are. But I believe the girls go to Valparaiso this week and take on they're not the Crusaders anymore. I can't remember what Valpo changed their name to, but nevertheless, they're playing Valpo. I think it's on ESPN also.
Yeah, I think that talking this last weekend, I think that was a big kind of test for Western Michigan. They're actually playing Valpo. Looks like tonight, maybe.
Tonight.
Yeah, tonight they're playing Valpo tonight over in Indiana. The Beacons.
Beacons, that's what they are. That's right.
So they're playing Valpo tonight. You talk about Western Michigan and kind of what they've done on the season. They're 2-5 on the year. They're 0-4 on the road, and just kind of briefly looking at what they've done here with their schedule, they've faced some tough opponents. They played Loyola Chicago at home, lost a 9-point game there. They played at Sparty up in East Lansing and lost in a pretty ugly blowout there. Lost at Michigan. Their game against Detroit Mercy was canceled. They beat Youngstown State at home, and they beat Grand Canyon or Grace Christian College at home. So, and then you talked about a tough back-to-back road trip with Colorado and then Colorado State. So they've not played any slouches by any means.
No,
but
not at all.
Definitely some tough competition. But as we know in the MAC, the only thing that really matters is how you do in conference play and those 3 games in March in Cleveland. So
sure,
they can get to Cleveland.
I think I
So
was the only Western media there. It was
sure.
interesting too because they had the Western Michigan Bronco next to my name on my media pass.
Yeah, that was super cool to see.
Yeah, and I'm like, this is interesting because that's never happened in any school we've gone to.
Sure.
And so, but it was cool. Though. The pass had the state of Colorado logo. It had the Under Armour logo, and then the Bronco logo next to my name. So it was interesting. But it was interesting too because I mean I was watching my game, but I also had your game on the computer going at the same time, so we can keep track of what's going on there. And we also had TCU. Who'd they play? Kansas State going on another computer. The guy next to me, so we kind of had a full it's like a sports book going on up there.
Sure. Sure. Speaking of my game, I was obviously up in Detroit for the MAC championship. In the last 3 seasons, you and I have seen 6 different teams play in this game. We've talked about this multiple times on the
Yeah.
show about how much parity there is in the Mid-American Conference. Well, this obviously proved once again that parity is alive and well in the MAC. We saw a 7-5 Toledo kind of limp into this game. They had dropped their last 2 to Bowling Green and Western Michigan. We saw Ohio come in riding a 7-game win streak, 7-1 in conference play. They were 9-3. They looked really good and poised to win their first conference championship in 54 years. That, however, was not the case as Toledo jumped out on their very first drive. They go up early, 7-0, and then their defense just plays unbelievable football. Toledo takes a 10-7 lead into halftime, a scoreless third quarter, and then Toledo puts the icing on the cake in the fourth quarter, wins the game 17-7. A lot of people will say this was a boring game, but for once, I think it was cool seeing a defensive game.
Yeah, we haven't seen too many defensive games in the conference this year. We've seen a lot of good quarterback play. Obviously, OU was hindered by Rourke not playing, and nobody really knew the status of DeQuan Finn up until an hour or so before kickoff.
Right.
So that was kind of obviously good for Toledo. That helped tremendously because he was able to make some plays when needed. But yeah, both defenses really stepped up and were able to keep it from a blowout and only make it a 10-point game at the end.
This is the lowest scoring MAC championship in title game history since it's been a neutral game. Obviously, there have been low scoring affairs in which a team has won the MAC championship. This is the first time that it's been this low scoring in a true championship game fashion. DeQuan Finn, you mentioned he made plays when he needed to. Obviously, put up a $150 in passing, made great plays with his feet. He was responsible for 86 yards on the ground. The stat that I take away from this game, Ohio had the number 1 rushing defense in the conference, only allowing 123 yards average a game in conference play on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
They surrendered on 46 carries, 236 yards to Toledo.
Wow.
That was big. On the other side, Toledo obviously has an excellent pass defense, actually one of the best pass defenses in the MAC. And they proved that. They only gave up 163 yards to CJ Harris. They held Ohio to under 100 yards rushing.
Wow.
So Toledo really, the defense that has been there, not there, really showed up in a big way this weekend. And a lot of these players, you could tell coming into this, the energy for Toledo was different, especially after that opening drive touchdown. They came out, they were hungry. They had heard the stories that we're the underdogs, even though we're favored. People are kind of discounting what we're going to do. Let's go out and let's show people that we're Toledo. And for once this season, Toledo played a complete game from opening whistle to the clock striking 0.
Yeah, and that was really important too. It's interesting too. You mentioned that holding OU to under 100 yards. I mean, Bangora has been having a great season. I think going into the game, he had 700 some yards on the year.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a great job for Toledo to, because he's a game
On the year counting the MAC championship game, he had 940 rushing yards.
Ooh.
So, and he was held to 56.
56. Wow.
His long run was 7 yards.
Mm-hmm. And, towards the end of that game, it did get a little interesting too, because there was a late turnover. Was it a late turnover that OU was able, OU picked it off? Was that what it was?
No,
And then
Toledo had 0 turnovers in this game.
Okay, so it was the other way around.
Ohio threw an interception in the second half.
Second half. Okay, maybe that's what I'm thinking about. Um, but yeah, it was a late interception when they had an opportunity to go down and score, but then Toledo made it a 3-point or made it a 10-point game after that, I believe.
Yeah, so it was
Yeah.
the way it all worked out. It was really kind of nuts how, and this was towards the end of the first half. Actually, so forgive me. Ohio threw a deep pass. CJ Harris threw a deep pass, and Toledo picks it off. It was a tied ball game. Ohio was getting ready to knock on the door to go score. Toledo takes it down, kicks the field goal to take a 10-7 lead into the break. And I think that really kind of set the tone for the third quarter. Again, scoreless, like I mentioned. Toledo takes an incredible opportunity at the end of the third quarter, leading into the fourth quarter, a 7.5-minute drive to
Mm-hmm.
go and score that touchdown. So they not, when Ohio got the ball back, it was we only had 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter. So it was a really, really slow, methodical, let's take our time, let's read our defense, let's focus in on what we're doing drive that we really haven't seen Toledo do all this year. We mentioned last week on our preview show when we had the Toledo guys on from the Midnight Blue and Gold podcast. We talked about how Toledo's defense can play well if Toledo takes their time on offense. They took their time on offense. They gave their defense plenty of time to rest on the sideline, killing essentially a third of the second half on one single drive. So they did an excellent job with that. And I really think that was the difference maker. As the defense showed up, Toledo had some sustained drives, but there wasn't a lot of explosive plays in this game. And I think if you're a fan watching this game, a lot of external fans will say, wow, those teams really suck. But if you're a fan who really knows these teams and understands how these teams operate, you'll tip your hat to the defense, and that's exactly what both sides did. They showed up. Ohio was held to under 300 total yards. Toledo had almost 400. Ohio had the pick, obviously, in the first half. It was a great atmosphere, a great opportunity. 15,000 people were there, almost 2-1 in favor of Toledo, obviously being an hour from Detroit, a lot closer. They clinched earlier, so tickets were getting sold a little bit earlier. But I mean, it was a great opportunity for both Ohio and Toledo. Ohio obviously drops the game 17-7. The drought will now swell to 55 years. But man, what a game.
Absolutely. I was talking to one of the writers for Colorado State about that because he goes, "OU hasn't won it in like a long time ago, 50 plus years." And he's kind of like, with Frank Solich and all those guys, like, yeah, he never won it. He was there 16 years and never won it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was an impressive drought to say the least. But now we finished the championship weekend. We know who's in the college football playoffs. We know which MAC teams are going where for bowl games. We got a few coaching changes we got to discuss.
We do, yeah. Obviously, it's not new news anymore that Tim Lester was let go up at Western. But there's been some traction on that front with the Western job. Pete Thamel from ESPN mentions that Lance Taylor, who's the offensive coordinator at Louisville, has become kind of the front runner for that. So I'm sure I think Western Michigan's athletic director wanted to make a hire by the end of the week, I believe is what I read.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember who retweeted it or what reporter said, but that could be something that's done here in the next couple of days. Then you have up at Kent State, Sean Lewis heads out here rather, out to Boulder to join Coach Prime up at Colorado as the offensive coordinator. That was kind of one that really kind of surprised a lot of people.
So that one was one that surprised a lot of people. Talking about the Western Michigan one real quick, I know that we have our own personal bias on this, and we were definitely both sad to see. We obviously wish Coach Lester the best as he
We'll have him on the show for sure.
prepares
He's
for
a
his
friend.
next
He'll be on here.
as he prepares for his next stop. But we wish him the best. That was we were sad to see him get let go, but Lance Taylor, I mean, this is a guy who can really get an offense moving, and he's 41. He was an assistant coach in college and the NFL. He was actually at Notre Dame as recently as January of this year, and he left Notre Dame to go coach at Louisville as the offensive coordinator to kind of help set him up and prepare him to be a head coach. It does look like this is all but official.
Mm-hmm.
Pete,
and that's interesting too, because Louisville just hired Jeff Brom from Purdue as their new head coach.
well, and I'm going to say that's probably part of it, right? Is that
I think so.
Brom's going to bring in his own staff. This is an opportunity. If you're going to be hired away from a school, go when a new head coach is coming in, because they're going to bring in their own staff, and now you can kind of secure your place with a program. But looking at it, I think this could obviously be a really solid hire. He was part of the squad that helped develop Christian McCaffrey, and he helped coach Kyron Williams and Tony Jones Jr. So I think that this is a really, really good opportunity for him. He was a grad assistant under Nick Saban at Alabama. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that's a good one. But in terms of candidates for Kent State, I haven't seen any names pop up yet.
I haven't seen a ton, but I would not be shocked if Jim Leonard was in the running there.
Okay.
From Wisconsin. He's already made it clear that he's coaching the bowl game, but he's not returning to Wisconsin next year to coach with Luke Fickell. I think he's a coach he's been an interim now. He's been at Wisconsin as a defensive coordinator for a while. His defenses are well known. It's a Jim Leonard defense. But he's a guy who I could see Kent State really going after as a really young coach. I mean, he's got to be in his late 30s, early 40s. He was playing with the Browns not that long ago. And so I think he can emerge as a real opportunity.
He's 40.
He's 40. Okay. So yeah, super, super young coach. I mean, Coach Sean Lewis was probably 40, 41 also.
Yeah, Sean Lewis is a pretty young guy.
So I think he can emerge as a number one prospect, if you will, for a head coach at Kent State. I think he'd fit in really well there too.
Sean Lewis is only 36.
36. Oh Lord. That makes me feel a lot worse about my life.
He was the youngest head coach in FBS football at age 32 back in 2018.
Wow. Yeah. So yeah, anyways, Jim Leonard, Kent State, obviously, I think the coaching change may have come to a shock to Kent State because it happened so quickly. I mean, Prime was hired last week and he's already building the staff. So he made that happen really quickly. But yeah, Jim Leonard's probably going to be the number one choice on my board.
Yeah, I mean, I like the Jim Leonard potential hire. There's the coach from Ferris State.
Yep, he was in the mix for Western also.
I like Tony Annese. Tony Annese. Yep. Yeah, I like the idea of him making that FBS jump. Obviously, he's got a really good thing going at Ferris State, so that they would need to really pull some stuff to get him to make the move. But I think it's very interesting to see all these potential coordinators who are going to have opportunities to open up. Obviously Jackson State losing Coach Prime, that's a big loss for them. But Colorado, I mean, you saw his press conference. They've got to be ready.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm out here now, so a lot of the news sources are talking about that. And I was again talking to people at Colorado State, and they're like, "Well, they don't want to see it, but because they had a rough year. What was the first year head coach also? With I think Norval's their coach, and so, but yeah, I mean, it's interesting news all around the Colorado sports media, which I get out here. So
sure.
It's going to be interesting to see what really does happen.
Well,
what kind of stuff he builds.
And I think it's really, really interesting. Sean Lewis leaving and Tim Lester being let go. We're seeing a lot of those players jumping in the transfer portal from both of those programs. Kent State has 9 guys in the transfer portal as of today. Notable players: Marquise Cooper, Colin Schlee, Dante Cephas. Those are starters. Those are offensive starters who are gone. Montre Miller, one of their wide receivers.
And the portal only opened on Monday.
Yeah, portal only opened on Monday. Montre Miller is one of their wide receivers. Huntington, not Aiden Hutchinson. Sorry, right. That's the former Michigan defensive. This guy is also a defensive lineman for what it's worth. Marcus Harris, wide receiver. Savion Washington, an offensive tackle. Like, there's just there's a lot of star power leaving this program, and I wouldn't be surprised to see even more continue to move, and that's just Kent State moving over to Western Michigan. I mean, we saw the portal kind of open up on some of those guys, and I was not shocked to see guys like Corey Crooms, Brandon Fisk. Those are guys who are leaving in the portal as well. They've got 6 as of what I'm seeing on the 24/7 Sports website right
I think
now.
and two of those guys have got Notre Dame offers. I believe Fisk has,
Yeah,
and who else did?
was it Crooms? Did Crooms
I
get
think
a
it was
Notre Dame?
Crooms. It might have
Okay,
been Crooms. Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, another guy, Kenny Givens, Marshawn Nealon, Andre Carter. I mean, these are guys who have been heavy contributors for this program, and those coaching changes are making a difference. Comparatively, Akron has just 3 guys in the outgoing transfer portal.
Mm-hmm.
Toledo has 1. Bowling Green has 2. Ohio has 1. Like Ball State has a big one in Carson Steele, obviously.
Yeah.
John Paddock, their starting quarterback, obviously entering the portal. So they've got 4, but nobody's been hurt more by the transfer portal than the 2 teams who just lost their head coaches.
Yeah. And it's interesting too. I mean, Kent State went so long with having a consistent quarterback. They went from Crum to Schlee. Now they're gonna have somebody else new next year. So that's 3 new quarterbacks in 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
That's something Kent State hasn't had to deal with in a long time.
Yeah, so that's going to be a problem for sure. Obviously, whoever steps in and takes over the Kent State job, good luck to them. Opportunity to go and be successful in the Mid-American Conference, of course, but Kent State is definitely hurting. I mean, now I'm just looking at some of these. Miami's lost another big one with Brett Gabbert. Of course, we talked about that privately, but Miami losing Brett Gabbert, and he announced that really quickly. He announced that right after they
Ball
beat
State
Ball
game.
State. Yeah. So, and it makes sense, right? He's a quarterback who's been in that system for a while. You obviously don't want to see that happen, but it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
You got a couple guys from Eastern, obviously, in the portal. I think every MAC school has players in the portal right now.
Probably.
Yeah, so
But for as much as they lose, they're going to gain just as much, if not more.
Yeah, I absolutely. You're going to get guys who realize I'm not getting playing time at Wisconsin or at Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to see opportunities at a Toledo, at a Central Michigan, at a Northern Illinois, whatever. So yes, they're going to lose guys who may have really made their impact, or guys who, and no offense to anybody who deems Division II FCS level their skill level. It's good to recognize those things, right? But I think you're going to see those guys kind of transfer out to those programs as well.
Sure.
Get more playing time. Like I'm not getting the playing time I want.
You look at the North Dakota states, the Montana states, the Montanas, the Weber states of the world. I mean, I watched Montana State just because that's where my wife went, and it's fun football to watch. It's really good too. I mean, last year was Montana State and North Dakota State, the national championship. It's like, okay, these guys are legit.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's gonna be an interesting couple of weeks, and especially after bowl season. Bowl season start next week already? 2 weeks, the Bahamas Bowl.
Next weekend is the Bahamas Bowl, and then after that, bowl season kicks off.
We get deep into it, yeah. So it's gonna be really interesting to see, what happens. I mean, coaching. There's going to be coaching changes after bowl season. There's going to be more transfers. I think the NCAA. I saw something the other day, and it's probably changed now. But like 400 some Division I football players entered the portal. I think maybe I sent it to you. I forget. Let me see if I can find it here.
Yeah, it was 400 on day one. 427 players had entered the transfer portal.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. 467. Yeah, on the 5th. Like that's the NCAA has to really be like, all right, we've got to crack down. We've got to do something.
Well, and I think
so many.
Sure, and I think to that point, right? You look at what the transfer portal is. It's the NFL free agency at the college level. And
Coach Lester talked to us about it. He broke it down for us because we didn't know how it worked.
Well, and I think obviously you're going to need to refine it to some degree. It needs to be similar to recruiting periods with recruiting out of high school. I think that there needs to be once you are in a program, you cannot transfer out of the program until after their season is officially over. If their
Sure.
season is over after week 13, that's fine. If their season is over after a bowl game, that's fine. But I think you need to limit it. But I also think, you give it like hey, here's a 2-month window where coaches can contact you from other schools. But I think it's also going to hurt high school recruiting to a degree with
I was
how
just going to
open
talk
it
about
is.
that. I was just going to talk about that because I saw somebody. I can't remember who tweeted this out. I wish I would have screenshotted it, but it essentially said that the transfer portal has become more important than high school recruiting.
I think Big Game Boomer tweeted that out.
Was that who that was? Okay.
And I don't disagree with that, but I think that's an overblown exaggeration because you still got to get those kids into college, right?
Sure.
So you've still got to build your programs. I think that the NIL is causing more issues with the transfer portal because kids aren't focused on, can I go and be a good player? They're focused on, where can I go and chase the bag, which
Sure.
totally fair. But that's where the mindset is.
Sure. And, not to mention any names, but we've been told a few times of why some players from the MAC have transferred, and that is because of some NIL deals that were thrown their way.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's going to take a while for the NCAA and governing bodies to, I think, really start regulating. Okay, here's what's going down, because that Tennessee quarterback who's coming in as a freshman. I don't know if you saw this or not. He's enrolling early, but he's going to be able to be a part of the bowl game.
Mm-hmm.
This dude got like $1 million in NIL deals, so he's going to enroll early, but he'll be able to either be at the bowl game or dress or even play if he wanted to, because they don't have a quarterback, so might as well. So it's going to be weird. It's going to be a weird few years until the NCAA really does figure out how they want to take care of all this.
Well, and I think back to college football in the 90s, right? When we got to see players stayed 4 years, maybe 5, boom, they were gone. It was done. It was over. They moved on. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that we need to revert back to that. I don't want to sound archaic or anything of that nature, but I do think that it's important that there needs to be regulations to some degree. We cannot continue to open this up to where kids are making, all this money off of that stuff. And I hate saying it the way that I'm going to say it because it's not how I want it to come across. I think that there needs to be a cap on what you can make as a college football player.
Mm-hmm.
Because if there isn't, then you're going to see kids essentially, they're going to come to a smaller school, a MAC, an SBC, an AAC, a Conference USA, whatever. They're going to go to those schools, take a year, look excellent, and go chase a bag somewhere else. Go to an Alabama and Ohio State. Never play, but to them that won't matter because they've got the money already.
Sure. And you talked about putting a limit on that. I think there also needs to be a limit too on how many times you can transfer. You look at guys like JT Daniels, for example. He left Georgia, went to West Virginia this year for 1 year. Now he's entering the portal again.
I think you should be allowed one free transfer. Mm-hmm. And then after that, it goes back to what the original rule was. It was the 1 year
sit out for a year. Yeah. Yeah. And it's hard to believe that was only 2 years ago you had to sit out.
I think a little bit longer than that because of pre-COVID stuff and
that's true. So,
they were switching all that stuff up, but it's been very loose because they started adding the grad transfers and
that's right. That's right. Yeah.
So it's been a couple years, but I do think that requiring students to, if you go to transfer a second time, you have to sit out. Unless you're a grad transfer, then I think that really, really changes the scene.
Sure.
And you're going to see kids think about where they're transferring.
And now kids have the extra year with COVID. They're going to go kind of anywhere they want.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited to kind of see how it breaks down and what happens. We've obviously got bowl games that we'll be talking about. We'll break that down next week. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I'm excited. There's some bowl games I personally have circled on my calendar, and we can talk about that next week. But
Sure.
the big ones that I have obviously are Toledo, but I'm really, really interested on the Ohio, Wyoming, Arizona Bowl.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. And before we get to bowl games, I will be at Army Navy this weekend.
Yep.
So not doing any cover. I'll do some coverage, but I'm not going as media. My sister-in-law goes to Navy, so it's like, oh yeah, we're coming to the game. So we're flying out to Philly on Friday. And so that's gonna be a lot of fun. I'll do some stuff on our social media for that. Do maybe a video on the game or whatnot. I have no idea where we're sitting, nowhere. I think we're staying in the team hotel.
That'll be cool.
So who knows what we can come up with, but I'll see if I come up with some stuff. But nevertheless, we'll do a little bit of coverage from the Army Navy game, and that'll be a first for us also. Be the first time ever going to that. So that'll be a bucket list item, which I'm really excited about.
Sure. Yeah, no, that'll be a lot of fun. I'll probably be at the Quick Lane Bowl this year doing some coverage for Bowling Green, New Mexico State. So that'll be a lot of fun as well.
Mm-hmm.
But we got a lot of cool stuff kind of planned, kind of moving forward.
Which that's a weird matchup too. We'll get into that next week.
Yeah, that'll be a next week topic. But AJ, anything else you wanted to throw out there?
That's it.
Cool. Well, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Obviously, we're going to be posting some photos from the MAC championship this weekend up on our website. So be sure to go check those out at the CSCpodcast.com. We also have our Shopify account open. If you guys want to check that out, it is the CSCpodcast.myshopify.com. We have t-shirts, we have hats, we have can koozies, we have really a little bit of everything kind of available on this Shopify account. So we want to get stuff into your guys' hands. We're really excited trying to kick this off, trying to get our content out to you. So again, you can check that out at the cscpodcast.myshopify or .shopify.com. And
we'll tweet it out.
Yeah, we definitely recommend you guys check that out. It's gonna be some good content for you guys to be able to pick up. We've got, again, polos, hats, can openers, bottles, stickers we just added up there as well. So check it out. And yeah, I think that's going to do it for us, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we will see you next week.
See you.